Good morning and welcome. I'm Jeffrey Magee, and I'm going to start from the back of the room. For those of you that came in and got last row, you're now the front row. Those of you that came in early to struggle to the front are thinking I'm a long ways from the front. Ideas. It's said that you can only solve a problem, your brain can only go as deep as your vocabulary allows. Think about that one. How deep is your vocabulary? There's roughly 337,000 words in the American dictionary. Winston Churchill is estimated to have one of the deepest vocabularies at 25,000. The average business person has 13,000. The average high school student is working off of roughly 3,000. How deep is your vocabulary? Your vocabulary allows your brain to think differently, and starting at the back of the room is exactly the point I would like to start with. How do we look at things differently? We've just heard from three of our great colleagues on talking about how we look at our issues, how we deal with our business, how we deal with what our customers' demands are today. Think about all of the classrooms, all of the workshops, and all the meetings you and I have attended, and some of you have actually facilitated these. And being in the CPE world, you get to do this every year. The clock starts over. What's interesting, as a doctorate of psychology, I get to do the same thing, only we're not as good at math as accountants are. We get to spend 8 hours a month, and over the course of the year, that adds up to 40 hours, so someone needs to help us with our calculators to figure out how we keep R and S in certifications. But back of the room versus front of the room. About 10 years ago, I recognized we come into these classroom settings. Rooms are pre-set up like today. We pick our favorite seat because we think that's going to be the front, and there's some telltale clues like stage, screen, lectern. If the speaker's going to be introduced, and the introducers go up there to start it off, which reaffirms in your head you guessed right. That's the front, there's the back. And then everyone just plays through the whole day because we're creatures of what? Habit. I love the old adage game. In fact, if you took a blank sheet of paper and labeled it adages, and just jotted down the first half a dozen adages that come to mind, you will have created the greatest MBA level doctrine out there. You could take any adage and turn it into days of leadership development, succession planning, or in essence, how you look at your leadership pipeline. So how do we do things differently? Well, about 1980s-ish, there was an adage that kind of came into the workplace as its lexicon, and if you're old enough to remember it, help me finish it. If you don't know this one, just lip sync it and play along. But the concept was get outside of the box. And the whole point of getting outside of the box was to look at things differently. So as you go through this day and this conference, I like to plant a different seed in your head, two of them. One, let's let the back of the room be outside of the box, looking at something different. Let's let the front of the room be all the SOPs, your expectations, doing things the way you've always done it. Because we've been told if you do things the way you've always done it, then you should expect what? Same results. If those results make sense, I would be the first as a consultant to tell you keep doing it. As I work with government agencies, CPA firms, and major corporations, one of the first things I recognize is that sometimes people are always trying to reinvent the wheel when it doesn't need to be reinvented. But sometimes we do need to look at things differently, get outside of that box. So just to stress out all my fellow speakers for the rest of today, just notice how all of them will probably start right at the front and do everything as expected so you can smile at them and they think you're in a good mood, but you'll be recognizing, wait a minute, very robotic. Have to look at things differently. So looking at things differently, you have my entire handout and notes right there on my business card. It's in each one of your place settings. And the model there is called trajectory. If I were to plant two seeds in the 8 minutes I'm going to visit with you, one is trajectory. When I look at doing leadership development programs, when I work with high potential individuals, the one thing I recognize is that we are very much creatures of habits. One firm is doing pretty much what the next firm does without really critically asking the question, does this make sense for my firm? A lot of times individuals do what they see someone else is doing without really asking the critical question, does this make sense? So back of the room is something new and different. The front of the room is what you expect. And there's a diagram on that business card called trajectory. And that is how I'd like you to look at every program the rest of today. Everyone who talks, think about trajectory. You came here maybe with a specific need, challenge, or problem. Think about trajectory. If we think about trajectory, I'll draw this up here. This will be my PowerPoint presentation. Since I learned from some of my colleagues that if you're not the IT guy, you might not want to use some of these diagrams. But if you think about this model here, back of the room, this is going to be letter A. One line will be letter B. The other line is C. And then on that wallet card, you kind of have a little grid right there. That grid is critically important when you look at anyone who's successful. Anyone successful in business as an entrepreneur, anyone successful in business as a business. That circle at the bottom, one line being letter B, your behavior, individuals, if it's your organization, your employees. Line C is in essence the course, the outline, the goal, the objective. And what we have in business today, and Frank just talked about with some of the challenges going on around the world today in economics, is that what happens is we wake up occasionally and we are letter B, and we recognize where we're supposed to be is letter C, and at the top of that diagram there's a lot of energy that it takes to get back and forth and get on track. And that's the way most people operate. They never recognize that circle at the bottom. You have to recognize any decision you make, any action you're engaged in, any comments you're about to make, recognize if you were to extrapolate, where's that going to take you? Is it going to take you out to letter B, or is that going to take you out to letter C? Because inside that circle is what I call the 1% factors, the 1% zone. People and businesses that recognize when they're in that circle what they're doing and it's going to take them off track, they can recalibrate and get back on track that fast. But a lot of us, we don't recognize where we are until we're way out there, because either we don't communicate, we do not collaborate, or sometimes we have egos involved. Do any of you have colleagues with egos? I mean, not us, we're talking about our colleagues. Do you sometimes have colleagues that maybe have been in your business? We'll talk about the traditional CPA firm that have been there forever. See, some CPA firms, the way they work is if you live long enough, you become the senior partner. Any of you seen that happen? Again, not you, we're talking about other people. And then in those situations, we really do become creatures of habit. Stay with me, got to be fast. Those attitudes are quick. See, sometimes because we are creatures of habit, we fall in those traps of you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Some of you are getting this because I'm preaching to the... See, the faster you get, you're back at the bottom of that little circle. You're catching on fast, fast, fast. But some people, they debate these. They want to create a focus group. They want to hire a consultant to study. You know, when you suck, you suck. You don't need another study. So in that, Pam said, Jeff, would you like to come out from Bozeman, Montana and share some ideas? I said, sure. Then she started talking about this conference. It sounds great. Then she said, well, but we have 8 minutes. I'm going, okay, you lost me right there. Professional speaker, you asked me for 8 minutes. I like that. That's a good day. Normally it's like 90 minutes for a keynote, or half a day, or a full day. So how do we look at things differently? So if I were to give you 2 nuggets to take back with you, one is that trajectory model. I would challenge some of you to maybe go back, and you have better resources than others, and maybe make some real fancy diagram and hang it on the wall in your office. Put it on a piece of paper on the back of your door so when you shut your door, no one can see it but you. And start recognizing everything you do, is it on the B or the C axis? Because C is where you're trying to go, and B is what takes you off track. So simple questions. If I was working with you in your firm, I'd say, what are the deliverables of your firm? Are the deliverables of your firm on C or B axis? So you get excited about a pet project, that's B. Does it have anything to do with C? And if not, that's how your firm goes way off on a tangent. Next thing you know, you're doing things that's not your core resources, it's not your core competencies, and you get in deep trouble. We elect people to office, great people, but then after we elect them, we find them way over there at B, and we need them to be at C, and we're mad at them. Well, you elected someone who doesn't have a resume. But see, we get caught up in popularity. We get caught up in emotions, and that's why the B axis gets us in trouble. So to illustrate my point, let's do one kind of group activity. Now, I know it's dangerous with this, being you're highly analytical and I may not be, is that you guys want to create teams and do spreadsheets to come up with these answers. So you've already got an A+, so the pop-ups have already happened. You've already got your CPE credits. No one has to go online to do an internet quick research to see if Jeff's answers are right or wrong. They're all correct. Just go with it. So here's my thought. If we want to look at this axis, and we want to make sure people are working together when we start to go off track, get back on track easier. Because see, this energy here, we look at, in essence, enhancing. Could be a word. How do you enhance change? We heard about that one this morning from Tom Hood next door. Well, what we tend to have is way up here, when we're trying to get people back on track, we have what's called change conflict. And when you have all this conflict, it's because people weren't on track to start with. So how do we keep people on the right track? Well, there's a concept called the X factor. I was doing a retreat for the Adjutant Generals Association out in Colorado a couple years ago, so I'm going to call this one the X factor. As a matter of fact, it's your Adjutant General from the state of Maryland that came up and was talking to me at break and said, of all the ideas I've heard in 32 years in military management and leadership training, this is one of the most profound. So as I'm driving back to the airport, I started reflecting on, okay, how could someone who spent 30 years in the military say this one is top of the list? And it started to dawn on me what they were getting at. So here's the point. X is going to represent success. So however you define success is what X represents. No wrong answer. So 150 of us in this room, if you were to write down your definition of success, whether it's health, happiness, material possessions, wellness of your family, titles, whatever, you got an A. But to illustrate this point, so we can go back to the trajectory so that you can maybe look in that mirror of life and have tough conversations with yourself. have controlled, not attacking, but controlled conversations with your peer group, your colleagues, your employees, your children, your spouse. Think about this concept. So let's use a group example for X, and that group example will be athletics. So if it was academic traditional school year time, and we went to any high school campus in Maryland, let's say, of 100% of the students on that campus, X% would be good enough to make the high school athletic varsity team. So what percent would you all put on that migration? So 100% of the population pool, X% are good enough to make the varsity team. Anybody? 35%? 2%? Give me some more numbers. 5, 10? Okay. So let's first see if we can agree with a trend. Whether we have an incredibly generous 35% at the front of the room, or we have the 10, 5, or 2, would we all agree, though, of 100% of the people that can do the endeavor, it's a small percentage that would excel? True or false? True? Okay, so we don't have to debate the numbers. Fair enough. Now let's keep tracking. Of 100% then of high school varsity athletes, X% would be good enough to get a scholarship and go play it at the collegiate level. What percent migrates? So thank you, sir, from 35 to 5. That was a pretty good drop. So now would you all agree the more proficient you expect someone to be at X, the population pool gets smaller and smaller? True or false? Fair enough? So then the last question. So now of 100% of collegiate athletes, X% would be good enough to go play it at the pros. What percent migrates? So now I got calculators coming out. Is that what I'm hearing? Less than 1. See, you're, in essence, not high school kids trying to figure this out. And with all due respect, we have 5 college student members in this room, so kudos to you 5, seeing how all the other colleges must suck, seeing how you're all from only one school in this room. Then, in essence, the rest of you are pros sitting in here, so you're the pros. So less than 1%, 2% is who's going to become pros. Is that what I heard? Okay, now here's the model of how you take this back home and use it. Successful people understand this map. One of the things that I do that Pam and I first got connected on is I publish a national magazine. Comes out each quarter. We get 25 very high-impact personalities to write success articles on our magazine. We've had heads of state. We've had major New York Times best-selling authors. We've had celebrities. Shaquille O'Neal wrote in our last magazine, interesting, only NBA player to have an MBA. Why did you get the MBA? His response was, because I'm talking to Donald Trump, I want it to be about something more than basketball. Now he has his PhD in education. How do you look at things differently? How do we look at things differently? So if you study any successful person, here's what they recognize. Now, I've also went off on a tirade to see if you forgot some numbers. So using your own math, if we're looking at the X factor, at best, of 100% of people that can do the endeavor, at best, X% would be successful. What was the greatest number we just heard? 35%. So what's the balance? 65. You're the math people, not me. 65. So if you want to recognize this model, here's what it's saying. On any endeavor you and I could go after, at best, 35% success factor on everything on the planet we could touch. Therefore, we have to recognize 65% of the time, first 3 letters. Phonetically, what's it pronounced? Now you know where suck comes from. There's no K, nothing negative. Federal Reserve. I had 85 bank presidents in a room last week in Chicago. This is exactly one of the things we talked about. Why are some of your banks in trouble? Because 65% of you suck. Think that got their attention? And I said, now let me prove it. 32% of all of the people in the leadership development pipeline in the American banking system are eligible to retire right now and over the next 4 years. Take it a little bit further. Over the next 5 years after that, roughly 30% of the people in the management pipeline are eligible to retire. So in the next 10 years, roughly 60% of the people in the banking system in the United States are eligible to retire. Do you think we have a leadership development pipeline problem? So we won't even talk about AICPA, we won't talk about your CPA firm, we won't talk about, in essence, what's going on there. See, the Horizons report that came out talked about all the things that younger CPAs or CPA-to-be said they want in a firm. Interesting, 10 years prior to that, the same survey was done basically, and it came up with almost the exact same answers. Nothing changed in a decade. Take it one step further. The McKinsey report that came out last week talks about 76% of all of corporate American executives in the Fortune 500 that were surveyed say leadership development in that pipeline, succession planning is critically important. Second question, how many of you actually are doing it and are applying and benchmarking all your decisions off of it? Less than 7%. Do we have a trajectory problem? Enormous. How do we look at things? So when you look at things, look at it from back of the room, doing something different. You're going to have a strategy meeting with your own team. Have it in a different place, different room, different geography. Come into your own office and look at how you even came to work on a typical day. You probably left your home and drove the same way you do all the time, parked in basically the same place, walked in the same way, went to the same desk. We're creatures of And think about what happens to your attitude when someone changes the drive or changes your flow of that day. Most of you, because you're linear people, don't typically go, wow, this is great. 695, highway, traffic, it's at a dead stop. This is great. Gives me a chance to enjoy the weather. Now, most of us have 14 spasms, right? Have to stay focused to stay on trajectory. So as you look at this conference, this innovation summit that's going on here, think about, what did I come here for? Was it just to get out of the office, or was it to pick up some new ideas? But notice your trajectory. A is always where you are. It's where you're starting. It's where you're from. B is what your actions are taking you. And C is the goal or destination. So Colin, you and I had a chance to visit this morning. You're from a university. In essence, you have, in essence, a successful leadership chapter that your colleagues came from there. You're a student member of this association sitting in this room. And this morning I made comment. You need to network, get to know the right people. You have a clue where you want to go with your career. Those are the ones you want to meet. Look at the vendors around the side. Look at the faculty who are speaking. Those are the ones you want to network with. Then you said there's one person I want to meet. Who was it? Tom Hood. I said, good, he's standing right there. Let's go introduce you right now. Boom, take care of it. See, successful people realize trajectory is, in essence, a short window to success. But most people don't capitalize on it. They wait until they're in the wrong place to do something. The only difference between successful you and the people that are envious of you is that you're on the B axis. No, you're on the C. You're staying focused. They're on the B axis and want the whole world to come accommodate them. Thanks for your time. Thank you for the ideas. Pam, the room is yours. Thank you, my lady. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.